And away we go here for Xbox Division 3.
Still wheel to wheel coming out of turn 19.
Tries to go down the inside of Desio. Desio giving him space, but not by much.
Oh, and he's oversteered, and he spun. They're side by side, off the track, neck and neck.
Let me know when you want to turn our mics on, if they're not already. Everyone at home hear us okay?
Hope so.
Perfect. Well, yeah, hopefully they can. That we'll figure out sooner rather than later, or sooner or later. If we've got issues, someone in chat will let us know. So welcome. This is PPR Season 3 of our GT3 series. This is round number 2. We're at Zandvoort today. In the booth with me, I have Dimitri and Brian Faluna. This is Austin Jabber. Welcome, everyone, to the stream. Welcome, Dimitri. Welcome, Brian. How are we feeling today?
Feeling good, feeling excited of this track that takes tremendous courage to get by somebody, so it's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, be watching for those passes today. Watch turn 4, because that's one that can be tempting for the drivers to pass in, but not one that really is going to turn out super well for you. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar, turn number 4 is the very sharp, I guess, almost hairpin-like turn that the drivers are kind of coming up to right now. We've got Kokelt on the screen right now. He'll be the first one coming up to it, and likely first to start a flying lap. Coming down the main straight right now between turns 11 and 12. Not a main straight, but straight between 11 and 12. Here we go, this turn right here. Turn number 12, 13. Oh, perfect. So that'll be another one. 13 and 4 closely resemble each other with the exception of the elevation. So we're going through sector 3 right now, coming up to turn number 14. Kokelt is going to let the car just ease its way into the turn. Drift wide on the exit, and now we're on the straight. We're going to go ahead and ride along for a hot lap. Kokelt, of course, the winner last week at Imola. Going to try to get on the podium again. Around turn number 1, keeps it nice and tidy through there. Coming up turn number 3 here. Now turn number 4. This is the one that's going to be tempting for our drivers to pass in. However, as you can see, it's going to be quite tricky because there is a lot of camber track camber in that turn. It's going to want to force the drivers to the inside if they're going too slow and force them to the outside if they carry too much speed through there. That's going to be, I think, a big point to watch during the race today. Drivers, a lot of them are going to get it wrong. We're going to see people get it right quite a few times, but be watching for that. And entry speed affects your line through that corner so much. So Kokelt right now running a pretty good time. Looks like he's pulling away a little bit from the car behind him. I believe that is truly behind him. Oh no, Ruiz behind him, then DeBon after that.
And interesting
keeping it
fact about Kokelt is he actually lives very close to the circuit. Apparently you can see it from his window.
Well, yeah, definitely one of the favorites to podium today, if not win the race. Very familiar with this track. As I said, lives right next to it. So that's always something that, if you can just look out your back window and look at the turns, that's going to give you a little bit of an edge up. Just being able to see in real life kind of what those turns do and then translate that into the digital world. Because it's one thing to learn a track in the digital world and go from there. But if you actually have a chance to, I assume he's driven it at some point, being that close, you can imagine you'd get onto a track day sooner or later. But yeah, definitely one of the favorites. So a little bit more about the track today. In our in-game season, we've got winter, so the track's going to be a little bit cold. Right now, it looks like we're looking at about 15 degrees Celsius or so. Race duration today is going to be 90 minutes. In-game race time, it's lunch, so that's 1100 to 1300 as far as in-game clock goes. Mandatory pit stops today, we're looking at 1. Mandatory requirements, fuel is not required, but tires are. So expect to see a little bit of a split in our strategies from our drivers today for that. They're going to be looking at different fuel levels going into the race. Fuel, you can load up at the beginning of the race with as much fuel to get you through the race, so all 90 minutes. However, that's going to make your car very heavy around these turns, and it's not going to be very pretty keeping the car under control for the first half of it. In the second half, when you just load up on tires and you've already got your fuel, you're going to save that time on the pit stop. So that's going to be what our drivers have to weigh today, is how much time are they going to lose with the extra fuel on board versus just letting it ride and getting the fuel during that pit stop. Real world, so we practiced today was, let's see, 20, what would that be? Yeah. 8 p.m. Yeah, so 8 p.m. Interesting time or local time for the track. Interesting choice there because the temperature is definitely going to be different at 8 p.m. compared to where we're starting the race today. Oh, it looks like at 9 p.m. Okay, never mind. So that's 2100 GMT. We are going to be... Oh, no. Okay, never mind. That's just when we started. Okay, anyway, you all know what time that is because you're here.
Riding with James Warren's beautiful Apple livery on the NSX, of course.
Yeah, I was talking with Warren a little bit earlier today and about how the NSX was doing around this track, and he did not remain extremely optimistic. They had, he was saying the NSX is one tough car to drive around a track like this. The curbs, I imagine, are going to be a problem with the NSX riding a little bit lower, but looking at the general times for our cars, the Nissan is going to be expected to do around a 134.6. I believe these are either average times or these are world record times. The Nissan's going to be down there when you compare it to the time of a Mercedes when you get the 134.4. Looks like we're going to be seeing a lot of around those times, 134, 135. Right now already we've got Cluck out with a 134.3. Moriarty currently in second with 134.8. 34.8 with Joe McCauley as well. Weska, 134.9. Then we break into fifth place with Adam Banfield, currently in with a 135.0. 135 is down the rest of the field until we get to number 25. Looks like with Curtis Pugh. There's his first run on 136. Yeah, so all drivers between 25 and 5th within 1/10 of each other. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, today's midfield battle is going to be pretty intense today. You know, that first lap, guys are going to jockey for that position. But I think they're going to understand very early on that qualifying as many runs as they can get in is going to be imperative, because the last thing you want is mess up that qualifying run and then end up stuck behind a driver who you've got the pace, but you can't use it. So there's going to be that quite balance. You get a good quality lap in, but then in the race, balance out aggression versus patience. And to your point, Kermit, if you decide to go with the probably the less optimal strategy of a heavy fuel first stint and a light fuel second stint, you're gonna put yourself really on the back foot there. And I kind of see a lot of these drivers probably splitting half and half. This way the tires, because time of the year, the way the track is, the proximity, I think these guys are going to split a lot of their strategies for this race. But I don't know. Someone might throw the wild card out there, try for the undercut or maybe an overcut. But certainly in the midfield, I would definitely expect someone to go pretty aggressive, looking at how close things are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's going to be a really big part of this. Just look at as you mentioned, look at the track map off to the right. Look at how closely packed these cars are. That's not just a problem that you're going to have during qualifying here. That's something that you should expect to see during the race. With cars running this closely to each other, the slipstream is going to be important, and exactly what you have for fuel load and tire life is going to make all the difference. We're going to be watching these cars battle back and forth throughout these 90 minutes. They've got 90 whole minutes on the track, and spending an extra, what would it be, roughly 20-30 seconds getting fuel in the pits could make a huge difference when you're talking about strategies that are this close. So what do you think? Do you think we'll see any drivers kind of split the fuel usage? Are there any drivers that we'll say start with 3/4 race distance, get it down to about 1/4, and then try and fill up to half? Or what would we typically see as far as fuel levels go?
For the drivers who are piloting, I would say particularly the Bentley, really surprisingly, one of the best fuel mileage vehicles on the grid. Surprisingly for that twin turbo V8, gets fantastic fuel mileage. So I could kind of see them going with a slightly heavier fuel load, going long, and then having the track position, not only with the how narrow the track is, but how wide the Bentley is. It's almost like a match made in heaven, where you're pretty much a roving roadblock or chicane.
Pretty damn
Some
good
of the
looking road
guys,
club.
absolutely, yeah. You can't get that wrong.
This Bentley of Griggs, it's a nice frosted livery we got here. I could probably look at it for the whole 90 minutes. Definitely won't be. Share all the cars I can with everybody. Some amazing liveries here.
I could certainly see, guys assessing their strategies, particularly in that midfield, which, as it kind of stands, from right now, Fitzpatrick all the way down to about, who is that now? Hugh Still. So, you're talking about 17, 18 guys. Somebody in there is going to go, just looking at Detox and the Why So Serious livery. He's that question will come up probably many times with some of the moves some guys are going to put on each other this race. Why so serious? I could certainly see midfield drivers particularly going for some aggressive strategies, going light fuel, forcing the issue. I could see mainly the guys at the front of the grid maybe going slightly heavier, knowing they've got the pace in hand, particularly Niels. As it stands right now, his pace, he's 3/10 up on McCauley and Moriarty and Weska as his closest competitors. So I would almost feel comfortable saying he's going to go heavy for a light stint on the back end, knowing that he's probably going to catch traffic, and if he can delay that for as long as possible so it doesn't lose him lap time, that would be my best guess.
That would make sense. I mean, if you think you've got that time in hand, you want to minimize the time you have in the pits, and if that means getting less fuel, then that means less time in the pits as well. So, of course, Kokelt taking home first place last week at Imola, took home the pole position as well. Do you think he's going to be able to do it again this week? It looks like he's got quite the pace right now. He's at 1:34.3. Macaulay's best lap time is at 1:34.6 at the moment. So he's got quite a bit of work to do if he wants to close that gap.
Certainly for Niels, clearly he's got the pace, 2/10 on his nearest competitor. Surprisingly, the Honda, which is not exactly the best car for this track. So I think Niels is probably odds-on. Clearly, definitely is P1 now, but definitely the odds-on favorite. I think his biggest fear is going to be lap traffic under blue flag conditions. But other than that, I think I think he'll be good for this race.
Yeah, it's a good point about the blue flag conditions, because that's just something you got to watch out for on this short track. And speaking of short track, we've got our fast lap times, and there you see it. We've got Kokelt out in front with a 1:34.3, Macaulay in second, 1:34. Now, 3:68 goes 30 hundredths slower than Kokelt. Nice effort from him there. That kind of pace makes me think that we're going to be very close on the during the race. Watching from these drivers, that how much fuel they take on at the beginning is probably going to have a lot of influence. Wonderful. As our drivers go ahead and get ready, going to go ahead and take just a short break. We'll be right back. We are back, and 54 seconds to lights out. Excuse me, rolling start, I believe. I don't know that we do the standing start.
No standing starts. No standing starts here in GT3. Thankfully, a little bit more natural feeling, if you could say, compared to our Formula One brethren.
Yeah, definitely. I think a standing start would be extremely hard in these cars. With a lot, they're a little bit heavier, so it wouldn't be quite as exciting. I think the rolling start's probably a good idea.
I think we have
So I want to talk a
session
little bit
restart.
about our double point, excuse me, or our point system here. So far, nothing too crazy. Our championship standings are just what our race results were from Imola. However, what we've got to start looking at are the double points for these drivers. Each driver has 2 tracks that they can score double points at. They pick them at the beginning of the season, and there is only one driver that put Zandvoort on their list, and that is Huesca. He is looking apparently to score pretty high here. He qualified 4th, so he's starting from the 2nd row. Ricardo Huesca, there we go, is going to be scoring double points for however he finishes. So he must feel pretty comfortable. Pretty interesting that we talk about Kokelt and him living right next to this track and feeling very comfortable with the layout. But he wasn't one of the ones that took the double points. His double points are at the higher. Oh, wait, where is he? There he is. He took Imola, so race win for him last week. That worked out fantastic. He got
Dominant
double points on a
performance.
race win. And he qualified first, so I think he gets a point for that yet as well.
Yes, championship point for class pole position, or in this case, it'll be overall until we break them down after the 3rd race into the respective classes. And then I think it was Cody last race that ended up with the fastest lap at Imola.
It's right, Cody Pride. Yeah, he took. Don't have the fastest lap sitting in front of me,
which was surprising considering he was in the BMW and he was, he wasn't very optimistic about, the race pace on that. But I think Cody is really outperforming the BMW. He certainly outperformed the Nissan that he was in last year.
Oh, absolutely. That BMW can be a little bit tricky to get under. Honda, or the NSX last year was a favorite of our drivers. This year, I don't know if it started last season or if it was this season, but we've decided that we needed a little bit more diverse field. So we only have allowed a certain number of each type of car in the game. We have, that brings me to, there's actually 2 you won't see here. That's going to be the Porsche and was it the Audi?
Yes, the Audi will not be permitted this season, and you can drive one of the Porsches. So you can drive the 991.1, the older generation, but the 992.2 has been excluded for this season, and primarily to increase greater diversity, guys getting out of their comfort zones, trying some different things. But it looks like we're getting ready to begin the race here
Quick
on the
look at
parade lap,
standings
and
for
then
you.
Niels will lead them off until the front straight.
So Niels P1, Barrier P2, Colin P3. Looks like we got that one. Now it's time to
Perfect. Drivers are getting ready. Dimitri, if you want to switch over to that. Oh, that is right.
there. Heli cam.
That'll work. It just says session has ended on the screen. I had that as well. I can't remember how I got that to go away. I think I had to go to blank HUD and then back to broadcast. But at any rate, our driver's coming down the main straight. We're going to go ahead and get it started here. Oh, you have to hit escape and then drive right away. Or get that to go away. Perfect. There we go. And the race is off. We've got Coquel down the main straight is leading the pack right now. We've got Banfield and the Mercedes looking to make a move down into turn one of the prime passing areas.
Contact.
A little bit of contact on the track. We got Moriarty battling for third up front with Huesca. Huesca just getting past Moriarty, is going to look to make that stick. Goes around turn number 4 at the moment. Yeah, they're just getting out of turn number 4. Risky place to pass, but he got it done. Moriarty's falling back places. The gap to himself and Marsh behind him in the orange Ferrari is slowly decreasing as well. Moriarty looking to make moves on Sable here. Excuse me, Moriarty. I wonder if that is one of the cars like we were talking about that just takes slightly different fuel than the other cars. It's looking like Moriarty's having trouble keeping the Nissan under him at the moment. Oh, no,
Yeah, mostly a tidy lap there on the opening couple of corners there. A little bit of argy-bargy going in between turns 1 and 2. We had a couple of guys off, and then same thing on the downhill right-hander. But mostly pretty clean from the drivers across the grid. But yeah, definitely going to be some aggressive moves, trying to jockey for position early on in this race. But mostly clean from our drivers, considering the size of the grid.
Yeah, pretty clean so far. We've got a nice battle going on in the midfield. Looks like going all the way from Devon, maybe? Maybe it's, could be Warren or Fitzpatrick there. Hard to tell. We'll get, as the season goes on, we will get a little bit better with the...
Oh, my goodness. Looks like we've got a pretty sizable incident. About like turn 13 or 14 there. Looks like someone spun going into that section. Looks like it might have been Horwitz with an awful time.
And then falling back, there we go.
Like he's creeping his way back to the pits there. That's pretty unfortunate. Oh yeah, he's definitely got some substantial damage. Probably something on the suspension, probably on the control arms, or potentially even the steering rack. He's going to limp his way back into the pits.
Niels already with a second plus lead for McCauley. Niels unfortunately doesn't get too much camera attention because he's so dominant, but we'll make sure to get him here on his home track.
Yeah, right now, McCauley might be looking to make a challenge at it. The gap, as you mentioned, isn't, you know, nothing. Hovering around a second, maybe 6/10 or so at the moment. But it's certainly not unsurmountable because McCauley's really matching him move for move through these turns. Look at the way they're flowing. A little bit wider in the Lamborghini, just what he has to do in order to get the power down in that car, because it's going to be, excuse me, never mind, the Honda NSX that he's coming up from behind there. But Coquel is just making no mistakes here in this Mercedes, one of the cars that is seemingly pretty strong, but whether that's because it's the car itself is set up well or Coquel is just that dominant in this car, that's anybody's guess at the moment.
Yeah, the 2020 version of the Mercedes AMG GT Evo, you know, one of the big things they made updates for the transition was to the control electronics. You know, the professional drivers in the series talked about how, you know, that was the one area that they wanted to focus on. You know, give a little bit better traction as well as into the ABS zones, and I think you're seeing the benefit of that. You know, the other big change, which is, you know, blatantly obvious, is to the front aero, where you've got a much larger, you know, what you could almost term as the mustache for the front grille to help in, you know, cooling in the front end to really keep those brake temps and the tire temps under control. You know, one of the issues with the Mercedes being front engine, you know, kind of lended itself to, you know, substantial amounts of understeer, which they seem to have dialed out, and I think Niels has got a great handle on it. But Joe's certainly going to keep, you know, try to keep inside of his draft there, within that 1 to 1.5 second range, and maybe Niels will help pull him around the track. The big benefit for Joe, though, is going to be saving fuel behind him. If he can just stay that bit close enough, he can save a couple of liters of fuel during the stint and may be able to undercut him in the pit stops.
Nice battle going on in P8 right now between Sosa and Rommel. Sosa has been defending his heart out against the Lamborghini of Rommel and the Ferrari of Banfield. Behind him, we've got Warren, Fitzpatrick, Bond, East, Pride, Martin, Berger, Walker, all close enough to look to make a pass here on one of the straights. Sosa here pulling a little bit away from the pack, but Rommel is going to be in trouble here by Banfield down into turn number 1. Banfield tries to go around the outside, can't quite get it done. Is going to need to find some other way to get there. Actually, it looks like
That's Mr. Warren.
yeah, pretty hard. Wow, yeah, I'm gonna have to do some work to get the car tights down here, because you've got the Lamborghini of Rommel there running just ahead of the NSX of Warren. No, Ferrari, then Warren. There we go, my bad.
6th position, we got a nice little Zandvoort. If I'm saying that right, I hope I am.
Yeah, Vervoort, Weller, Hinden, and Hendricks, right? All down in.
Somebody is off.
Now it looks like somebody in one of the Aston Martins, but you know, good on him. You know, he's holding his brakes, staying off the track, keeping out of the way, so you know people don't hit him. You know, trying to take evasive action. But yeah, you know, you guys talked about the, you know, the kind of the train of cars here. You know, unlike, again, our brethren in F1, you don't have this problem where you lose so much mechanical and aero grip following cars, and that's the beauty of GT3. You know, you get this consistent close racing to really test the driver. You know, can they race not only consistently fast, but in close quarters? So, you know, it's great to see this in GT3, and maybe in Formula One day, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, the downforce, of course, being one of those factors that just affects the car so much. These cars have quite a bit more weight on them than your average Formula 1 car, so they do have some natural grip in the tires just based on the gravity pushing them down on the track. Of course, they do have an insane aero package for cooling, downforce, what have you, but it's not necessarily as critical because you're not going quite as fast and your acceleration isn't quite the same as a Formula 1 car. So it's really a different animal driving these cars, but it's all the drivers will tell you it's just a different challenge. Hopping in one of these cars feels a lot different. The cars are a lot less pointy, a lot more prone to understeer if you haven't had experience in the particular car model that you're driving, and or if you haven't had time to flush out that setup. That's one of the things that a lot of the drivers in this league spend a bunch of time on. Looks like Rommel's going to try and go around the outside of Sosa.
What a move. Oh, Sosa's coming back at him.
Oh yeah, Sosa's not letting him have that. Looks pretty clean from our drivers here. That's one thing you'll see in this race league and drivers not complain about. There we go. Sosa pulls out just ahead around turn number 8 there. Gets that move done. Excuse me, that's turn number 15. I got to rotate my track map here.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate there for Rommel. Kind of had that suboptimal line going into the penultimate corner there. But, you know, I think he's going to keep Sosa under pressure, and I think he's starting to understand where Sosa is strong, particularly in that Mercedes. You know, the brakes on that are phenomenal compared to the Lambo that Rommel's running. So I think what Rommel's going to have to do is find a place where he can really attack Sosa in these acceleration in the apex zones of the corners, because I don't think he's going to outbrake him unless he's just braver, which that might be the case.
It might be, but that's one of the things you've got to weigh as a driver. So it's never a fun thing to have someone in front of you with better brakes, right? Because that means you just have to brake a little earlier than they do. And maybe you had to do that anyway, but now you're dealing with a little less downforce because you're right behind them. You're dealing with that rubber band effect that you see when the Mercedes just slams on the brakes. The Lamborghini does get a little bit closer, but that in turn requires the Lamborghini of Rommel to slow down further and not able to get quite as good of an exit out of the corner. So there's a couple points of this track that Rommel is going to try and target. We're coming up to one right here, the slow turn of turn number 13. He's got to try and get a good run out of it because there is a small run over to turn number 14 before you take the loop around. So brakes not mattering here quite as much. The high-speed cornering capabilities of the Lamborghini coming into play here, getting a run down the main straight. He's going to look for that slipstream to try and get past that Mercedes of Sosa. Gaining a little bit on him, ever so slightly closer. There's that braking. Wow, Rommel gets very close, but needs to get a better run. Not too much of an opportunity to pass the turn before turn number 2, then turn number 3, and turn number 4 here, which is definitely not recommended that you pass through this turn. It can be done, but not quite what you'd normally be looking for. Right now, up towards the front, Macaulay looks like he's going to get a little bit of a challenge from Cuesca in the Ferrari. I believe I'm reading that right. We've got the Honda NSX
a little bit further back. This is still Niels and Joe duking it up for P1.
Oh, wow.
Joe,
yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Joe seems to have attached almost like an invisible tow cable to the back of that Mercedes, and he is not letting him go. I think Niels might be a little surprised at the pace of that Honda keeping up with the Mercedes through this race. I wouldn't be surprised to see Joe continue to put the pressure on him, maybe force him into a mistake. But Joe's got to be careful, because if he stays too close behind Niels for too long, Niels is going to understand where Joe's strong at, where he's weak at, and vice versa on his own car. So, Joe has to be pretty measured. He can't, run up to the back of him too soon. He's got to find that right moment to put the move on him and really, get an overtake or just force Niels into a mistake. But well on him, though. I mean, you wouldn't expect the Honda to keep up with a Mercedes. So Joe is definitely outperforming that car right now.
Yeah, nowhere near the midpoint of the race, so pit strategies aren't going to come into play for a few more laps here. In theory, a driver could pit for more fuel and tires and take it to the end of the race at the moment, but you don't necessarily gain as much advantage as you otherwise would if you were to run with very low fuel levels right up to the midpoint of the race and then refuel. So something some of our upper midfield drivers, may have done is run really lean on fuel for the start, make up those early positions, and then throw on a set of tires for the long haul and a little more fuel into the tank and hope they can maybe come out into a gap. But that's one of the things that's quickly disappearing, because look on the track map just to the right there, we've got Macaulay and Kunkel coming up to some back markers soon as they come through turn number 12 here. Looks like they'll just have one back marker, but then there are a couple more on the main straight around turn number 1, turn number 2, and turn number 3. So we still have an hour and 17 minutes left to go in the race, so we're not quite at those back markers yet. But point being is that gap is closing. So if you have any of your midfield drivers that want to pit for new tires and get some clean air and run some fast laps, now is going to be the time to do it, because if they wait too long, there's not going to be a single gap left on the track when you factor in back markers. My goodness, I just lost my train of thought there.
During that time, looks like we had a little bit of an incident here between Buck and Lawrence into maybe turn 3 or turn 4. That very tight hairpin, very slow hairpin. Looks like we had a Honda and an Aston Martin become one. Not only with each other's cars, but with the track, making that already difficult turn a little bit more. But both of them seem to be back on their way. But yeah, it looks like Niels and Joe. Yeah, it looks like Hitchcock and Horwitz are going to be the first couple of cars they come up on. and you know, well behaved to everybody. We still have all 43 starting grid members on the track at this time. So those two up front are definitely going to face a lot of mobile chicane this race. And I wouldn't want to be them, I would say that.
Stuck like glue at the moment.
See that? We've got Dirk Gernot in the track, or excuse me, in the chat, saying the game is a little bit louder than we are. So we'll go ahead and get that fixed. We'll balance that out and then let us know if that's better. But yeah, we've got a good midfield shaping up right now. We've got Hinden in the white McLaren there. Now we've got Banfield and Vervoort going at it. Vervoort, of course, in the BMW, and then the Ferrari of Banfield just behind him. Hinden looking to get in the mix as well, is going to try and get to that 20th position. But right now he's also trying to defend from the Aston Martin of Weller just behind it. We've got the Bentley of Hendricks not too far behind either.
You know, I'd love to get an onboard view of what Hinden or any of these guys in this train is seeing. You know, to kind of see what they're seeing from their perspective here on the track. You know, what are they going to do? I would love to see. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Just that's a great shot to see the back of that Ferrari. Although, I'll let people make their decisions on how they like or dislike Ferrari. But you know, always good to see a close battle here between a lot of our drivers.
Oh, absolutely. Right now there's maybe 2 seconds separating, what is that, 17th to 25th? There's really a lot of cars all kind of jammed in the track here. Oh, one of the reasons there is you can see just in the background there, I believe that was Devon and Kamelski coming through, or coming together ever so slightly around turn number 4, where our drivers tend to get a little bit eager, and what we talked about before is the braking zone and entry into those corners are going to be all that much more important. Hinden doing a good job staying at the back of the pack right now, but I got to imagine he's eager to make up some positions right now. I think one of the things that goes through these drivers' mind at a stage like this is they could possibly pit, set themselves up for the end of the race, and maybe still get into the gap of where some of the first back markers are going to be, hopefully not get lapped themselves, stay out of the front runner's way, but get some nice clean laps in. Because you look at right here, Toth getting held up by Hannah at nice,
certainly finding a gap once they conduct that pit stop is going to be crucial. You know, unlike in professional racing series, you know, these drivers don't have, you know, spotters like in NASCAR or IndyCar, nor do they have, you know, engineers to help them out to say, hey, pit now, pit here, and this is where you're going to slot in it. So they have got to do a lot of that on their own. You know, they've got to be part driver, part crew chief, part engineer. I mean, in some cases, almost part pit crew. If they could get them to go a little faster, they would absolutely love that. But they've got to do all these things on their own, which, you know, makes this a lot more difficult, a lot more driver-centric than a lot of series out there.
Oh, definitely. The focus is really going to be on our drivers and how they're able to handle these cars. Just looking at this right now, look how close some of these battles are. We've got a nice cluster, of course, that we're watching right now around 24. We've got Pugh up in 18th, getting ready to be passed by Newman, potentially, in the McLaren just behind him. The straight line speed of that McLaren, really looking to get an advantage down one of the straights here, but just can't find it as of yet. Pugh falling back ever so slightly. The Bentley maybe a little bit less fuel because of the efficiency of the engine itself. Vervoort here going to be tangling with another McLaren of Hinden back in 21st. Right behind him you can see Banfield, Weller, Hendricks, and Kamelski all getting together, looking to gain these positions here. Really, they're just that close on the track that any one of them can have a look. Kamelski's starting to fall back a little bit, but Hendricks staying right on the back of Weller, Weller on the back of Banfield, Hinden on the back of Vervoort here, who we're riding along with in the BMW. So far, Vervoort last lap was 138.2, Hinden was 138.3, Banfield 138.6, and then a 138.4 from Weller. So be watching for Weller to potentially take over the next position here, but he's putting in the lap time. He's shown that he has the pace, and we are really getting a scrap for 20th here. All the drivers eager to get by turn 4, one of the dangerous parts to keep your cars that closely on the track around the S's at turn number 5. Hard to get a pass done around here, especially with the BMW pulling away from the McLaren ever so slightly. Vervoort doing well to keep his car out in front and use Hinden as a blocker so he doesn't have to worry about Banfield, Weller, or Hendricks coming up behind him. BMW is a wide car to begin with, but so are a lot of these GT3 cars. Vervoort is just doing very well, putting it at the right part of the track as he rounds turn number 10. The Hinden gets just into the back of him there. Not able to slow it down quite in time, but makes it out okay.
And Vervoort's the proverbial cork in the bottle with Pugh just ahead of him, holding him up. You know, Vervoort and Hinden certainly in probably the most unenviable positions because they have to attack and defend all at the same time. And then being an old school circuit that Zandvoort is, all it takes is that one tiny mistake. I mean, you could have a millimeter of the tire over onto the excess curbing or into the grass, and it's just going to lose you 5-6 positions. As Niels is finding out right now what he's got Macaulay right on the back of him. I mean, Joe has closed that gap up. It's almost seeming like Joe is closing up at will, that he has the pace on Niels, and he's just exercising some patience, knowing that I can stay with him, I can short shift, I can coast, save a little fuel, and I can put it on him at any time I feel like. That's what it's looking like right now from Joe.
Absolutely. I think especially if he saves that fuel and can push a little harder later, I think what Macaulay would want, well, he's got a lot of options here, but I think what's looking like a really good strategy for him is if he just waits for Coquel to pit. He's going to have to sooner rather than later. He realizes Macaulay is behind him. So Macaulay can take his time, look for an opening, and if Coquel happens to make a mistake or, like you said, just gets off into the grass a little bit, he potentially could lose positions, 2 positions to Macaulay, and Huesca now is going to try and get himself into the mix. But I think Macaulay here waits for Coquel just to pit, and then Macaulay tries to put in some hot laps, use up the rest of his tires because he's got to make the change during the one mandatory pit stop, take advantage of the clean air, get past some of these back markers. Now, I think Coquel, speaking of back markers, is going to be watching for that. As he starts coming up on these clusters of other cars, I think he's going to either want to use those to his advantage and try and pass them at advantageous points at a track like this, or he's going to see that as his window to pit if he starts getting held up by these back markers. Because right now, I think what Coquel would like to do is run Macaulay all the way up to the back of the field, get out of the way, let Macaulay be the one that's held up by the back of the pits, and then Coquel runs some fast laps. Looks like we had a GTR there on the inside. Not quite sure
Wow,
who that was,
oof.
but they had
having
some
a
damage
struggle
there.
of a time there. I gotta say, Niels, it's almost kind of like some shades of Lewis Hamilton back in 2016 with Nico Rosberg behind him. It almost seems like Niels is backing up Macaulay a little bit because Huesca's pace, while it's been very consistent, I mean, he hasn't really been taking chunks of time out of them. But again, he might be pulling a little Mercedes-esque. Maybe if Patty Lowe were around, tell him to get the hurry up on, because if Niels goes any slower, Huesca is going to now start attacking Joe, and that could be huge for Niels to maybe start pulling that gap and use that blue lap traffic like you talked about, Kermit.
Oh,
Huesca's,
absolutely. Coquel right now, his last lap was 1:35.9.
Faster.
Looks like someone in the chat's telling us that Niels is starting to struggle a little bit with his tire pressures. So if he's got those wrong, particularly in the front end, I mean, he's just going to be facing horrible understeer, and heaven forbid he's been sliding that rear of the car around, either not having enough traction control on or they're overpressured. He's just going to now start burning through tires and losing pace. So, I'm kind of curious of what exactly happened to Niels' tires.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, yeah. Oh, wow. His last lap was a 1:36.7. Joe Macaulay did a 1:36.3 last lap. So 4/10 up Macaulay was after being almost 2/10 down the lap previous. So he's going to be able to make up some of that spot. Huesca putting in some work as well. Did a 1:35.7 last lap. At that rate, he's going to catch up to Macaulay quite quick, and Coquel even faster. That'll be developing through the middle stages of the race here.
And it looks like Niels has got a little bit of understeer on that downhill right-hander in that fast corner on corner entry, so he might be trying to back off a little bit brake a little bit earlier, slow the car down so he can get a better turn in. But he might start to struggle now with a little bit of understeer if that front end is wearing. Yeah, he's still hitting most of these apexes, but I don't think he's getting that front end to rotate like he'd like to in the beginning of the race.
Now, Coquel doing a very good job holding off Macaulay and Huesca here, because it's showing right now that Macaulay and Huesca have the better setup, at least at the moment, whether that be tires, fuel load, or actual car setup itself, for pace. However, Coquel has been doing just that well to park his car right where he needs to be. Look at that. Gets it right on the impacts, fades it in late. So Macaulay looks like he's got gonna have a look at the corner, but then has to brake on the apex, losing a bunch of speed out of the corner. Macaulay maybe now getting a little bit impatient, runs it a bit wide. Huesca's going to close the gap even further. Very close between our top three drivers. 0.8 of a second separate Coquel and Huesca. Both of them driving on top of their game at the moment. Going to give Coquel a run for his money. Coquel drifts it a little bit wide there. Can't quite get the turn in to happen on the Mercedes. It being a little bit heavier. And as we mentioned, the front engine car is going to have to deal with understeer a lot more than the NSX or the Ferrari behind him. So Macaulay and Huesca doing well to pilot both of those. Coquel goes a 136.0 on his last lap and a 136.1 from Macaulay.
Yeah, Macaulay definitely's got he's got more pace in that car than I think Niels does right now. He just can't use it just because of the way the track is laid out. So again, just bide his time a little bit here. But Hendon, Pugh, Newman, they look like they're trying to break away slightly from that pack of four just behind him in that second or third at this point. McLaren of Toth, Hanna, Weddis, and Cross, and that second pack of four.
A lot of nice battles going on the track right now, 23rd being one of them. Marsh, it's going to be another one. Upton's coming up behind him, looking to close that gap. Can't tell if either has pitted so far. I believe that would have showed. Yeah, I think they have pitted. Most drivers, am I reading that wrong? Because it should show there be a 1 next to their name, I believe, if they haven't pit yet, because there is one mandatory pit stop. So each driver will have to make one this race. So if you haven't yet, be expecting to see those as we come to roughly the middle stage of the race here. We've got a little over 60 minutes left. 45 minutes left is going to mark the halfway point. 90 minutes total for drivers here. So still a lot of race left to go. We've seen a bunch of action on the track so far already. Marsh right now in the Ferrari able to put quite the distance on Sebel. We've got other battles going on throughout the field right now. We've got Hanna looking to defend, it looks like, from Guedes in the Nissan. Nissan all over the back of that Lexus right now. Lamborghini of Cross biding his time, looking to potentially get in on the battle for 25th as well. That Lexus handling these corners pretty well, but not much to be said for the straight line speed. The all-wheel drive, of course, of the GTR behind him of the Nissan, keeping the car glued to the track. Of course, that is the... Let's see, where is that? That's the Nissan GTR Nismo GT3. Look at that. Able to run that apex just a little bit closer than the Lexus. Tries to get a run, can't quite get it done because Hanna is doing a good job at keeping that door shut and making sure Guedes doesn't have a chance to walk his way through. Guedes is going to try around the inside here on turn number 11. Can't quite get it done, but they're going to go side by side down the run to turn number 12. This is going to be a sharp right-hander. So right now, Hanna lining up to take the inside, gets it done. Hanna gets the car out in front at Lexus. Guedes has to scrub off some speed to guard against Cross. Cross runs a little wide, can't quite get it done. Hanna looking in his rearview mirror, seeing Guedes and Cross going at it, and he is thankful for that. Hanna dipping his tire into the gravel there certainly isn't going to help him get the speed down the straight here. Might just get overtaken. Marsh, Upton, Rommel down the main straight. Down around turn number 8.
Yeah, Weddis is certainly going to have the run on Hanna there going into turn 1. Back on the Marsh there, last season's silver class winner, it's good to see him fighting with the pro class drivers that we had from last year. So he's clearly demonstrated that he had the pace and the potential. And, I expect great things from Marsh this year. while he's operating in the pro class against some of these faster drivers.
Yeah, indicating he may just be ready for that pro class as it is. Last week, Marsh placed 12th at Imola. So not a bad showing from him. Of course, right now he's halved the amount of positions between himself and the front of the pack, currently running 6th. Still in danger from Upton and Rommel. So if we're going to see Marsh defend the rest of the race here, he's going to have to do that against some very strong contenders, both Upton and Rommel, in cars that have strengths of their own at a track like this. The Ferrari right now showing its strength on the main straight, able to keep a healthy gap between himself and the Bentley of Upton behind him. Coming
And it looks like we
around.
got Joe jumping in the pits. So he's pulling the trigger first. We're going to see what Joe's going to do. Pitting a little earlier than I think we expected, so maybe he was running a slightly lower fuel load than his competitor there, Niels. So, if he was running that kind of pace with a low fuel load and Niels ends up having been able to equal or better him on a heavier load, yeah, it's not going to pay huge dividends for Joe on this second half of the race. So hopefully, maybe he's trying to get Niels to, get off his game a little bit.
Yeah,
But Joe's certainly pulling the trigger.
Definitely. Joe McCauley reading the writing on the wall a little bit. Coquel coming up to the back marker of Lawrence right now, getting around him no problem. But I think what McCauley, wow, falling down quite a few positions right now. So must be getting tires and gas. He's been in the pits for quite a while, starting to pull out of the pits. Maybe now coming down the pit lane. Wow, down all the way into 22nd. So he was starting to see the back marked traffic, and he was starting to maybe lose some time to Huesca behind him. So I think he decided to cut his losses, get the race, fuel to take him the rest of the race in the car. Coquel into the pits right now.
Oh, Coquel as well. So maybe he also was on a low fuel load. So let's see what Huesca can do. Maybe he went for a different strategy and decided to go either half tank and a half tank strategy, or maybe he decided to go long and really try to put that second stint out of reach for others to catch him.
Yeah, pretty smart move from Coquel at the moment. He knows one of the only ways he can be beat is by grip. And that is one of the things that he wants to at least keep semi-close to the other drivers around him. Huesca right now is on aging tires, so Coquel is maybe trying the undercut ever so slightly. But Marsh going to be one to contend for the top spots here as well. But McCauley falling down into, where's he at now?
McCauley, he's down in the 20s, so I think that also goes to show just how tight this grid is amongst all of our competitors. And the other thing about it is once these guys come back out in all that traffic, they're still going to be fighting now for overall position. So unless it's a blue flag car, they're going to have to contend with some of these other drivers, and they don't have to move out of the way, and they may not be as generous to give up that track position because they're also looking to score maximum points for themselves.
Every little inch counts, especially when you're talking about passing cars here on this track. It's so difficult. Right now we've got Kenneth Portis right now in 12th, looking to give chase to Junior in the Mercedes right now. Honda gets around. So Portis right now, following Junior, McLeod following Portis, Truly following him, then Banfield and Weller, and looks like Hendricks as well. So again, this nice tightly packed midfield. But going back to what you were saying, look at where Coquel's at. He's in 23rd right now. McCauley's still down in 24th. So they are going to be able to battle, but they've got to get through battles like this on the track while they do it. We've got Junior, Portis, McLeod, Truly, all kind of within this same sector here. So the strategy is going to play a huge factor. And that's one of the things that I like about the setup of this ACC both league as well as just the concept of the GT3 cars is right now there could be a car that is in very clear contention for the lead, but they may be in 7th, 8th, or 9th. What makes them a contender for that speed is the setup of their car as well as the pit stops they plan to make. If they just need fuel, if they just need tires, aren't looking to gather any fuel, someone sitting in 5th, 6th, or 7th right now is probably going to pit, come out potentially around Joe McCauley or Coquel in 22nd, and try and really give them a run for the money. Right now, it seems like they're on a pretty good strategy. So a driver in the front that is trying to pull that off can't wait too much longer because Coquel and McCauley starting to bring their way up through the field. Right now, 3 or 4 seconds behind the battle on screen right now. We've got McLeod and Portis going at it, both in identical cars, but I'm sure not identical setups. Well, obviously not identical. They got 2 different paint schemes. McLeod is currently in the purple. And then coming over, oh, wow, another close battle going on right now between Pugh, Vervoort, and Toth. Toth bringing up the back right now in the McLaren. Leading out in front, we have the Bentley of Pugh. BMW Vervoort's trying to get by, can't quite get it done. Goes right around turn number 13. Is going to look to possibly get that done down the main straight. But Vervoort is going to have to look for a better exit off these last 2 turns. Decent exit there, but the Bentley's starting to pull away with that straight line speed. BMW tucks itself nicely into the slipstream of the Bentley. Is going to try and get the pass done down turn number 1. Not quite gaining enough position to do that. Oh, BMW maybe looks to the inside, is definitely looking to close that gap to the Bentley. Successfully gets the gap closed ever so slightly down turn number 1. Turn number 3 coming up here to the right. Turn number 4, this is a tricky one. It's going to be tempting to pass here, but a difficult one to actually get it to stick. Vervoort knows better, decides to give him a run for his money around turn number 5, 6, and 7 here. The S-curves in the middle of at the beginning of sector 2. See how the drivers handled these. Following suit pretty much right through there, trying to get any slipstream advantage they possibly can. Vervoort is just looking at the back of the car of Toth and trying to get that gap to close. Gonna be looking to make another run for it down this straight here after turn number 10 that they're on now, then turn number 11. Gonna be a nice straight down into 12. Right now, Vervoort ran a last lap of a 138.1 and Toth ran a 137.5. So be expecting to see them potentially jockey for positions right now. Coquel dealing with some of that mid-traffic at the moment, is going to be trying to hunt down Guedes at the moment. Guedes potentially in the...
It looks like no, Guedes just let him go by. I think Guedes knows that that's not his fight. No need to fight the 2 leaders, but maybe, just trail him for a little while. It's interesting about Toth there in that McLaren behind Vervoort and the Bentley of Pugh. That's probably the worst 2 cars he could see in front of him because they are the 2 biggest cars, with the Bentley being the largest and the BMW M6 being the second biggest, looking up to its bigger brother, the M8 GTE, in the endurance categories.
Vervoort hops into the pits.
Kermit, talking about the strategies, in Season 1 and Season 2, we saw a lot of diversity amongst the strategies, particularly from Miguel Ruiz in Season 1 when he was driving the Bentley. He went and took a race at Silverstone, and he went with a no pit stop strategy, and he managed on fuel mileage alone to put it, I think, either in the top 5 or maybe on the podium. Last year, we saw that a lot with Team Flexus, the dynamic duo of Luke Walker and James Warren, do the alternate strategy on that Lexus and show that it can be very successful. You can put yourself into a podium. Although Luke did have a race that ended a bit in tears when he said, he had 1 liter underfueled his car at the race we had at Nürburgring, and I think he gave up a podium position because he had to pit for 1 liter of fuel. So it's phenomenal to see the variety of strategies that are out here today. But I don't know if it's going to necessarily work out for Niels and Joe if they deal with all these other cars fighting for position.
Absolutely. Looking at the battle on your screen right now, we've got a battle.
Oh, Pride going aggressive.
Wow, yeah,
Pride
getting
with
that
a great
BMW
move.
tucked right down in there around turn number 1.
Oh, he's going to go for the cutback here in turn 1 and try to just outpower him.
Barrier
turn
goes
2 and
around.
3.
Pride get on the inside. Pride goes off the track. I don't know if he takes responsibility for that or not. It looks like he's tried slowing down. Yeah, he's going to try and give the position back. Pride, I don't think that was anything terribly unfair there. It's just where he got the touch on Barrier that he started to really just get out of sorts there. So does the right thing, gives him the position back.
Man.
But look at this cluster.
This battle just got really heated.
Wow, we went from being nose to tail. Now we've got a group of about 6-7 cars that probably didn't expect this right now. So now it's going to get really interesting.
Looking like the
But
start
yeah,
of the
good on
race
Pride
again.
there. He tapped the Lexus, just a little bit of barrier. You know, if he submits a report to the stewards will investigate. But wow, that created a huge traffic jam that I don't think a lot of these drivers were expecting.
No, absolutely. Right behind Pride, we've got the two NSXs going at it. But right now, Portis is looking to get the pass done on Pride. Think he's got the speed in a straight line. Well, let's see if he can get the move done. Not just yet. That is the Mercedes of Junior. There we go. Looking to get passed by Pride in the BMW. Then we've got the green Honda NSX and then the purple and black NSX behind it of McLeod. We really have a nice battle shaping up here. Looks like Pride has got the pace to keep it out in front of Portis, but is the NSX advantage or, well, disadvantage going to hurt them enough that they can't quite get the pass done? You can see McLeod pulling off into the pits. Ooh, quite a few drivers into the pits here. We've got Junior, McLeod, Banfield, Weller all dive into the pits. They decide they were wasting too much time battling with Pride and Portis when they potentially were able to get by them on pace. They decided maybe let's go and get the new set of tires, put in the rest of my race fuel, try to put in some hot laps, get the undercut done there. We've got Cockelt and Macaulay still battling together with the ranks of 16th, 17th. We got McLeod right there. Oh, he's in the pit. So Toth just in front of him, Pugh as well.
And this is what we were talking about earlier here. So now that Niels and Joe have caught up to this traffic, in this case, you know, these are all individuals that have not pitted yet. So they don't have to give up position because these are 4 official race positions on the track. So this is the problem they're going to face. You know, is Weska going to benefit from this? Because he's just out front right now, him, Moriarty, and Sable, and they're just going to steadily gain time on them. Because these guys further down the grid clearly weren't lapping as fast as Niels and Joe. So is their strategy of going short and then going long on the second stint going to end up hurting them in the back end? And so far, it is not a gamble that is paying off. It's almost like these guys gambled and they may have thrown snake eyes on the craps tables. I hope I didn't just blow anyone's mind there with a gambling reference or something of that regard. And I hope I didn't lose my fellow commentators of Kermit and Radicus there. I hope you guys are still there.
Just completely lost in this battle between Macaulay and Cockelt, stuck behind
Or
Toth.
did I
believe
I
Cockelt
hope I
was
didn't
trying to
maybe
flash
age
him his
myself
lights.
there. You know, I've been wanting to throw out some references to say Days of Thunder, but you know, I don't want to age myself and date myself as the elder statesman here within the league. I feel kind of odd.
No worries about that because we have, it doesn't matter how old you are to enjoy racing like this right now. Look at Cockelt, Toth, and Macaulay going at it. Toth putting up a surprising fight for this stage of the race. Toth had yet to pit, I believe, but still giving Cockelt and Macaulay a run for their money as far as defending goes. Look at how he is feeding his car into those corners.
Yeah, Niels has got to be just starting to get, the frustration just has to be building inside of that Mercedes now. Just thinking, okay, come on, Toth. You know, this isn't your fight. This isn't your race. Just let me through. And Toth is saying, no, I'm trying to fight for position 2. You know, catch up to the back of me and pass me. And if you can't, that's not my problem.
Yeah, because Toth may know that there are other drivers potentially on his team that are positioned pretty well here, but still he's fully within his rights to do that and battle the drivers here, even if he just
Niels is going to go for it now. He is really going to make it hard on Toth, and maybe this is the gap he can use to get on Joe. Now Joe has to deal with Toth. Maybe he gets a better run on it. Oh, Niels gets a little squirrely there coming out of the penultimate corner.
All cars going to be
and Toth is going to get a run on him, so he may make Niels go defensive here into turn 1. And this is the worst thing that Niels wants to see right now, is fighting people he doesn't need to be fighting.
Yeah, what Cockelt wants to do right now is lengthen that gap between himself and Toth, and he saw how aggressively Toth was defending. So provided he's going to give the same treatment to Macaulay, Cockelt really wants to put that gap on him right now, and it looks like Toth is. Toth at a little bit of an advantage with the McLaren over the NSX at a track like this. You're going to see McLaren potentially get a little bit better exits. The NSX is going to struggle with that straight line speed a bit as well. And look at how aggressive Toth is being with the defending against Macaulay there. not letting him by at all. Now, Kokelt has put 8/10 between himself and Toth, and only growing right now, up to 1.2 seconds.
This is a boon for Niels right now. This is exactly what he wants to see, although he's going a little wide there here into Sector 2. But this is absolutely what Niels wants to see, is that now Toth gets to hold up Joe ever so slightly, and it's going to pay out the dividends in the back end of this race. So now Joe's going to have to burn up his tires more so
Has
than
a
he
look
wanted
on the
to,
inside.
and maybe a little extra fuel, and that's just not what he wants to do right now. But Niels has probably now got a smile on his face and saying, all right, it's my race to pull away. And Joe's getting a little impatient there, giving him
Flashing
the
his
hurry up
lights.
signal, flashing his lights, telling him just come on, move that McLaren out of the way, a la Kimi Räikkönen a couple of years ago when he was in the Lotus, saying get that McLaren out of the way.
Absolutely.
Go
That's one of the things
forward
that I
around the
like about these
outside.
cars. You can be a little expressive. Macaulay tries to go around the outside of turn number 1. Can't quite get it done. Toth gets a nice exit there. Macaulay has to back out, slot in behind him, but can't quite get it done there. So Macaulay's goes around the carousel yet again, turn number 4 here, where it dips down with looking for a chance to pass him into the S's here. Turn 5, 6, 7, you're going to see the McLaren start to pull away a little bit unless one of them gets the line wrong. Right now, Toth keeping it up ahead. Pride and Truly into the pits, so Macaulay moves up into 8th, but Toth still remains ahead of him in 7th. Toth, I believe, still has to pit, so right now, he's more staying out for a favor to Kokelt, because Kokelt has
and
not...
Toth
Whoa,
has
there he
lost
goes.
it
It goes a little
bit.
sideways.
Same
Kokelt goes
with
off
Niels.
too. Macaulay catches up. He's going to try and pass him in the 3rd sector here. Wow, that was a big change very quickly. 2 mistakes, almost identical times between our first and potential 3rd runner of Kokelt and then Toft as well.
That 2-second gap that Niels had built just gone in a flash, almost like he was spinning in solidarity there a little bit with Toth and just allowing Joe to catch back up. But that's got to be frustrating for Niels, knowing that now he's overheated his tires a little bit, got a little bit of the sand and gravel on him, so he's going to lose some grip. And this is just, again, now it's swung right back to Joe in terms of momentum. He sees an opportunity to attack Niels. I'm very curious now. Niels has been... he's been trying very hard to build this gap, and maybe he got a little too aggressive there in Sector 2. And unfortunately, Joe's going to be another benefit from him. You know, as a joke to his team name, maybe he'll kick in, quote-unquote, VTEC and maybe catch up and pass Niels.
Watch for it to be extremely obnoxiously loud when that happens. So one thing that Kokelt's got going for him right now is the car that he's in. Well, that Mercedes, watch how it goes through the corners. It kind of floats through him, gets a little bit of understeer, but he's just got the power to get down on the straights where you can see the NSX is just struggling. However, Kokelt is not feeling great about this because, as you mentioned, he had getting close to a 2-second gap between himself and Macaulay after being just 3 or 4 tenths gap between the two before the pit stop. But now the story's back to the same as it was before the stop. Macaulay just behind Kokelt. Looking at the distance we have between them right now, got Macaulay in 7th, Kokelt in 6th. Looks like we got a gap of about a half a second going right now. Kokelt not having to worry about the driver yet behind them, Sable, at the moment.
And this is, again, this is all just playing into the hands of Weska up at front. Because if you start to look at the gap that Weska has from him to where Niels is at, it is, if my rough math is showing me, he might have a pit stop in hand on the two of them. So he may be employing this overcut strategy, and that may end up benefiting him and putting him on the podium on the top step here. And maybe even for Moriarty as well. He might end up right ahead of these two. And this is, again, these are the worst possible scenarios for both Niels and Joe. So all this fighting with people for, track position with an early pit stop seems to be hurting them now on the back end, and they may end up fighting for that lowly step of 3rd on the podium.
They might, because right now they're staying neck and neck. So to be fair, the work's not over for Macaulay. We saw this before the pit stop, and now we're seeing it after, right? Macaulay still has to find that extra couple tenths to actually make that pass, which is easier said than done. right? It's taken him this long just to get this close to Kokelt, which he almost lost. So he still has to find that little bit of extra pace. So if you're Kokelt, I think here you just keep your head calm and you put in your laps right now, because you know you've got your pit stop under your belt. You're going to be able to go for the rest of the time. Huesca right now into the pits. He's going
And
to be
this is where we're
dropping
going to
back.
see it. Yeah, this is where we're going to see, you know, is this strategy from Weska going to pan out? Because as Niels and Joe are coming into Sector 3, I can guarantee you Weska is at least halfway through his pit stop, so it's going to be extremely tight. Either Weska's going to come out just in front of him or a lot closer and make this a three-way fight, and that's definitely not what they want to deal with going into the final stages of this race.
Now coming down the main
And
straight right
Huesca
now.
is
Wow,
out.
Huesca's coming out of the pits. He
Look
might
at
come
that.
out and, wow.
He has overcut them, and looks like he's gained about 3, 4, maybe even 5 seconds on them.
looking
So
like
that early
three.
pit stop strategy is certainly not panning out for Niels and Joe right now, and they're
No,
going to have a hard
it-
time catching up and passing Weska.
Definitely. Ricardo Huesca with the unexpected overcut working out extremely well, because right now he's got Portis between him as well. So Huesca looks like he's got a 1.1 second gap to Portis. Portis has a 3/10 gap to Kokelt, and then there is a 3/10 gap to Macaulay. So right now, Huesca is a couple seconds up on Kokelt and Macaulay. Portis still yet to pit.
Yeah, and if I'm seeing the timing right, I think it's a total of about, so it looks like he may have overcut them by about 5, almost 6 seconds in total. So well played there to Ricardo Huesca. Definitely voting. If you're interested there in the chat, for those who are viewers, if you're looking for drivers of the day, you might want to consider Ricardo Huesca as your driver of the day.
Oh, definitely. This is one that I would absolutely, just based on that, where he's been able to get himself in the race already. It's proven that it takes a little bit of skill to do that, and he's proven that he's got what it takes as far as strategy and a head on his shoulders to call those right shots and get out this far ahead at this point in the race. We got about 40 minutes left, so we're just after the break. So first place right now, we've got Sean Moriarty, then Huesca in second, Portis the second in third, Kokelt in fourth, Macaulay fifth, Upton sixth, Marsh seventh, Rommel eighth, Toth right now battling with Rommel in eighth or ninth, Sosa in 10th, I believe. No, Sosa in ninth, Warren in 10th, Clemenson 11th, Farrier 12th, Walker 13th, McLeod, Banfield, Hendricks, Truly, Pride, Bethel, Pugh, and Vervoort top out our top 20.
Yeah, something else to look out for is also Moriarty as well, because he was only about 2 seconds behind Huesca, keeping phenomenal pace and keeping him honest. So Moriarty might be another one that might also overcut them as well. And again, you know, Joe and Niels might go from looking at a potential P1, P2 to maybe just barely getting on the podium. So that early strategy is not paying out at all.
Now, one of the things I like about these tracks with such short lap times and such technical corners is that is how much of a difference your strategy can make, right? How heavy your car is going into each corner and how much contact patch and or traction you have in your car around each corner just makes that much more a difference. Look at Junior and Pugh right now, kind of going at it down into turn number 1. Junior looking like he might have gotten a bit of a look, but couldn't quite get it done. In turn number 4 here, let's see if Junior tries to make any moves. Difficult one, too. Junior goes up around the outside, maybe collecting some marbles there, but not really losing much time to Pugh. So we'll see here as he comes down through the S-curves. You've got a car off the track. They're going to have to watch out for the yellow. Hitchcock there off to the side. Looks like he's recovered quite nicely. Going to let them by with no problem. So Junior's still going to try and look to make a run at Pugh here. Pugh right now going pretty well on the fuel consumption, just as that Bentley is known to do. So he may have the lighter car at the moment. Junior goes around the inside on that Mercedes, gets it to stick. Wow, very tough place to get that to stick at that tight of a turn radius. But gets the job done, keeps it ahead around turn number 11. Vervoort right now in 20th is now going to look to challenge Pugh. Griggs just behind him in the Bentley is going to look to stick his nose in here as well.
Yeah, it looks like Junior certainly got Pugh out of position there going into the braking zone, and Pugh unfortunately going a little bit wide, and Junior saying, "I'll take that, thank you very much." and sliding himself up into the top 10. And if we look at the timing chart now, Moriarty as well into the pits. So we're gonna see, is Moriarty gonna end up overcutting Niels and Joe for the final phases of this race for the final 36 minutes?
A nice fight shaping up in our midfield here right now between Guedes in the yellow Nissan GTR and then Ruiz in the Lamborghini at the moment. Coming down, Lamborghini, you can see, looks like it's got the look at the end of the straights on the Nissan, but it's keeping that through the corners that is that much more difficult. Watch the Nissan just handle that corner. Lamborghini ran a little bit wide, is able to carry that speed through there. That may just give Ruiz the distance that he's looking for at the moment. A nice battle for our top 20 because Weller, Hinden, and Vervoort are not out of range once Ruiz is able to get past Guedes here. When and if, I should say.
Yeah, Guedes certainly looking very menacing in the rear view mirror and under that rear wing of that GTR there, and he's just going to wait to pounce on him. But Ruiz and the Princess Lamborghini there, he's probably getting frustrated as well, along with many of the other drivers on the grid. They've got the pace on the one in front of them, but they just can't use it. So he may start to get a little anxious on the final, say, 10, 15 minutes and start to get very aggressive with him.
Yeah, that he might. I assume we're going to... Wow, Mercedes there looked like...
Niels.
Back lap traffic there. That was Niels.
Yeah, Niels now having to deal with Portis in P2, or correction, P3, and he hasn't pitted yet. So again, he's another one of these drivers. He doesn't have to yield because he's fighting for overall position. Simultaneously, look at that just ahead of him. That is Sean Moriarty, who has managed to make the overcut work as well.
Absolutely.
So, between Niels and Joe, do they have the pace to pass Moriarty in P2 and then catch up to Weska? I just don't think
Joe
it's going
has
to
the
pan
run
out.
here. Joe has a really good run on Niels. Can he go around the outside?
Oh, gets the touch on him. Portis goes around. Moriarty, excuse me,
Oh.
Kokel continues. Wow, that's going to be a while for Portis to recover. Kokel doesn't back off, though, is still fighting with Joe McCauley. That's, I suppose, one way to get Portis off the track. But that was, I don't think the stewards are going to look favorably on that. I think that one, Kokel just couldn't quite get his foot to the floor, or didn't have the traction in the braking zone, just bumped Portis out of the way. Luckily, Portis recovered okay. He's still running in 5th. Still has to pit, though, and lost a bunch of time because of that incident.
Yeah, unfortunate for Niels there. Again, similar to some individuals earlier in the race, unenviable position. He's trying to attack Portis because he sees Portis hasn't pitted yet. So he wants to gain that position, but then he's also trying to defend from Joe. So unfortunate. Yeah, if Portis decides to submit that incident report for the stewards, yeah, they probably won't look too kindly on that because they're still fighting for overall position, and that could get classified as a punt to pass.
Yeah, absolutely. Kokel getting a little bit frustrated there because he knows he's got the pace in his fuel load and in the tires, but wasn't able to make that pass. But that's part of GT racing and what makes this just so interesting when you start looking at how these drivers are performing on the track. They're all performing under different conditions, even though they're all in the same weather conditions and on the same track and grip in that respect. But they're fighting very much different battles between their cars while they're all battling each other as well. Kukowski right now looks like he is a back marker and running with our front runners here. I don't think he really minds that. I think
no, Kukowski's just gonna use the draft of these two and pull away from Trulli, who's not too far back of him in the Lamborghini. But Kukowski there in P15 again. This will still be valuable points for him going into the season, and especially depending on what class he gets put into, whether the Pro or the Am class. This could be huge. So again, just like Joe, he's throwing out that proverbial tow cable to these two in front and just letting them pull them along.
No doubt about that. This is shaping up to be a very close end of the race here. Moriarty and Huesca both still in contention very much for a podium. Looks like Moriarty, I'm not sure if he has yet to pit. Can't see that on my screen at the moment.
Now Moriarty has definitely completed his pit. That's where you saw him come out just ahead of Portis there. So, you know, he's good. He is, if he can hold on to it, he is going to be looking at a podium position. Considering where he started, again, just like Weska, he might be tied in that that vote for driver of the day.
That's true. So yeah, Weska and Moriarty both now in it for a nice haul of points as well. Weska coming in 7th in last race at Imola. And let's see, Moriarty, where was he at? He was all the way down in 18th. So Moriarty 18th in Imola, up to 2nd here at Zandvoort. I've got to imagine he's very happy with that.
Oh, absolutely for him. I mean, you could almost categorize that as definitely the OP strategy. Everyone's gonna then start picking his brain and start asking, how on earth did you make that work? And you know, huge benefit for him is the fact that Joe and Niels decided we're gonna pit early, we're gonna gamble on it. We don't want to deal with traffic in terms of back markers, but the downside of it is they've been dealing with other drivers fighting for overall position for almost the last 30-ish minutes, and it's just hugely hurt him. And every so slightly, Ricardo just taking time after time after time out of them and getting that overcut to work.
Wow, Kokel really squealing those tires, getting around that corner, giving it all he has right now, not only to defend from Macaulay, but now to catch up to Weska and Moriarty. I took a look at the double point sheet again, and I'm glad I did, because we've got one driver that has double points marked for Zandvoort.
And if I were to take a wild guess, I would, let me guess, it's Ricardo Huesca now sitting in P1.
It is Ricardo Huesca sitting in P1. So if he gets, I don't think he qualified on pole for Zandvoort here. However, if he wins the race today, he's going to be 1 point behind Kokel for lead of the league right now.
Maybe he may even go for a fastest lap. So if he can get a fastest lap, he could end up tying him in this race. And that, you're going to start to wonder then, is Ricardo a little clairvoyant and know the future? But well done on him. I mean, hats off. You don't see that very often, someone picking a track that is probably the hardest track to make an overtake at, picking that as their double point. So he might be another one that people pick his brain and say, how on earth did you manage that? Hats off to him. Well done. So far, I don't want to jinx it with the commentator's curse. Heaven forbid he comes out of the penultimate corner and decides to put it into the wall.
I was going to say, there's still plenty of time left yet in the race. Don't call it just yet. But speaking of, I just want to express our appreciation here at PPR to everyone in the audience at the moment. Got quite a few new follows since we went live for our round number 2 of Season 3 in GT3. Looks like we've got Legger, Gurnot, Racer 6, Art, Ruthless, Squirmy, and Panther have all followed us since. So thank you very much for the follows. Very much helps us out here at PPR. We love to see it, and we love streaming for you guys out here. We wouldn't be doing it without the viewers. So thank you very much for stopping out. Consider subscribing. Remember, if you have Amazon Prime, you do get a free subscription every month to Twitch Prime. Or excuse me, you get Twitch Prime and you get a free subscription to each channel to a channel each month. And we sincerely hope that you pick us as that channel, but make us work for it. Right now, we put a lot of work into making it nice for the fans, and we still have a lot of ways to go before it's perfect. But we like coming out. We like doing this for you. Wouldn't be here without you. So consider that subscribing. It really helps us out. But thanks for stopping out as it is. Definitely give us a follow so you can keep up to snuff on our most recent events. We've got Formula 1, we've got GT races, we got iRacing, I think, on and off, but we've got PC, Xbox, PS4, you name it, you name the time zone, what kind of racing you want to see, we've got it. Don't worry about that. Right now, nice battle going on in 22nd right now with Hinden, Guedes, and Ruiz. Hinden in the McLaren, trying to keep it ahead of Guedes and Ruiz
and
at
just
the moment.
behind them, Huesca coming to lap them as well.
Yeah, he's coming up behind him. So Huesca's going to start hitting that lapped traffic that worked we've been talking about all race. He's got Guedes and Hinden just ahead of him, but not quite at them just yet. So now is where you start getting into the really tricky passes. Not that passing a back marker is ever easy, especially at a track like this, but passing two back markers that are both battling with another back marker behind you that is trying to ride your slipstream up into that battle, you're going to start to see Hinden and Guedes and the backmark cars not performing or not handling the situation like you would normally expect them to. Like, or as if you were to come up on a car that's just in open track. You come up on a back marker that's in open track, you can expect them just to pull out of the way, probably on the exit of a corner, get off the racing line, and just let you by. Now, Guedes, see, there he goes. He gets out of the way, but he's losing a bunch of time to Hinden. So now Guedes has to hope that Hinden is going to do the same thing. Guedes hedged his bets a little bit in order to get himself out of the way and not necessarily get passed by Ruiz in the meantime. So Ruiz is now battling with Guedes, but Hinden still out in front enough and that he doesn't feel he has to cede that position to Huesca yet. Let's see how he handles this, because as he gets close, you're going to start to see the blue flags waved for Hinden, and he's going to have to let Huesca by before too long.
Yeah, certainly there, Guedes is hoping that Hinden ends up slowing down here on this little short straight into the third sector, and that'll allow him to catch back up. But Hinden may not yield until we get back into the front straight, which is going to be huge. But he has to be careful because he's got a balance where he's letting him pass with reason, because if he fails to do it within that certain amount of time, Huesca, just as well as Guedes, they could follow that report with the stewards and say, hey, he didn't do this in a timely manner, and he's gaining an unfair advantage. I don't see that necessarily happening. I think Hinden's probably going to let him by here on the front straight. That'd be the responsible thing to do. But I don't know. Hinden's kind of learning how the other side lives, because he's one of the ones that we kind of expected to be a little higher up the grid, but because of some incidents last race, he ended up incurring a qualifying ban here for Zandvoort. And yeah, it looks like Hinden's going to let him by here through on the exit of turn 1. Looks like he gained a little bit of time, but I don't think he's going to end up holding on to that for very long between Guedes and Ruiz's pace.
No, Hinden's showing us how it's done, though. So you see that gap, at least as of right now, between Guedes and Hinden is a lot bigger than before Guedes had to let Huesca by. So picking a very nice point to do that, knowing that it would be easy for Ricardo Huesca to make that pass there, just runs it a little wide and able to maintain the gap between himself and the car behind. Sosa and Warren going at it right now. Jay Warren in that very nice Apple livery right now. Ooh, goes over the curb, gets a messy exit on that. Sosa is going to stay ahead for the time being. Warren, for having issues in the Honda NSX, is doing pretty well so far throughout the race, able to hold right around that top 10 position for most of the race, and looking like Sosa is within his sights. But we've only got 23 minutes left, so he's going to want to make that pass sooner rather than later. Just about every car on the track has pitted so far. Lawrence and Junior going at it as well. Portis now on the screen has a decent gap around him, so he's able to run some laps in clean air, but after his incident earlier, is going to be wishing that he was higher up on the grid. Marsh and Rommel right now going at it. Marsh sitting comfortably in 6th at the moment, but Rommel looking to give him a run for his money at any time now. Lamborghini and Ferrari relatively even match on the straight line speed. Ferrari and Lamborghini both good in the high-speed corners. So I think that's why we've seen these two drivers hang out around each other so much during this race. Marsh and Rommel just in very similar performing cars, might have set their setups relatively similar as well, but they've definitely been giving each other a run for their money around every corner around this track, because if one of them is to make a mistake, the battle between them's over, at least for the time being. Wood now drifting around to the outside, letting Marsh and Rommel by. That's how it's done. Very nice.
And Marsh and Rommel certainly keeping each other honest here throughout this race, making sure that the other is putting forth every possible ounce of pace and not giving the other any respite to relax here. Back on Sosa, he was Season 1's champion. I'm pretty sure Sosa is probably thinking he should be higher up the grid, knowing that he knows that he's got the pace and the ability to be a bit higher up. Maybe having some struggles getting to grips with that new Mercedes Evo this year, but I definitely could see Sosa getting closer and further up the grid as the season goes. onto James Warren as well. Last season's probably most improved driver in the Lexus last year, and I think he's starting to inch himself closer and closer to the tip of the spear. And he's certainly given Sosa a run for his money last year, and again, as you can see, continued that trend into this year.
Yeah, Sosa already not off on the best start, at least not as good as he would have liked. Because Sosa, believe it or not, last week Imola was one of his double points track, and he scored 8th. So 8th, not a bad showing, but nowhere near what Coquel was able to take home with his double points in first position. So Sosa already on his back foot as the season starts. Round number 2 so far is going to have to fight really hard to make that up. Next chance Sosa's going to have for double points finish is Misano. And Coquel for his second, his second double point, he picked Zolder. So Sosa and Coquel then diverting on strategies as far as which one they decided to go for double points at. But right now, the double points battle belongs to Coquel, because he just was able to maximize his points at Imola, just like you want to see. Caught a lot of others off guard with his pace at the beginning of the season, and continues to give McCauley trouble as we just passed the 21-minute mark into our last 20 minutes of the race here. McCauley is still looking for that gap, just has not been able to find it. You can see just how close he is to the back of that Mercedes. He's really going to be tired of looking at the back of a car like that by the end of the race. Looks like we got a car off in the gravel right now. I think it's a back marker. Wow, really cuts it close.
Very close.
Jeez.
Oh, wow, that is a terrible rejoin on the part of that other Mercedes there. He may be going to get a talking to by the stewards post-race. But, yeah, on that double points facet, all the drivers that only do get one for the season, they are allowed to pick a second as an alternative, just because, we at PPR know that, there are some situations that can come up that, don't allow you to race during the season, whether it be a personal, private matter. So we want to give drivers that opportunity, to maximize their points potential here. It's an interesting choice, though, for an alternate second points race for Niels to pick Zolder. Maybe he knows that one also being a relatively proper old school circuit, being narrow, is very difficult to pass at. That's certainly an interesting choice. I mean, probably not as intriguing as Ricardo's picking Zandvoort. So I don't know. Maybe they know something that just we don't. But just for everyone's awareness, there is just only one double points this season. It has been a point of discussion with the administrators and the race director, but I think they ended up settling on just one this year for the official. But, you never know. Things can change. We're always open to new ideas and trying some things out.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification there. So as long as the drivers were able to race, finish, and don't DNF for some reason or aren't able to show up, that will count as their double points race. So Coquel as well as Sosa both have their double points out of the way because they decided to take them at Imola. So Coquel, huge advantage over Sosa so far, and is potentially going to stay that way. So Sosa's really going to have to fight with Coquel, and as of right now, it's not looking like he's able to take the fight to him here at Zandvoort. It's much more McCauley, Coquel, Moriarty, and Huesca right now looking at the top positions. There's a decent gap between McCauley and Upton in 4th and 5th. McCauley 2.7 seconds down the road from Upton, looking to keep that gap pretty consistent through the end of the race here. 18 minutes left to go on the nose here. Just past that mark, drivers are going to be having to think about making these passes now. Their cars are much lighter than they were at in theory, during most of the race at this point. They only have, if they're lucky, about 18 minutes left of fuel, and is going to use that to the maximum in the 17 and a half minutes we have left. So be looking for our drivers to start getting a little more aggressive on the brakes and on the throttle, and maybe having to be a little easier on the throttle. With the car being this much lighter, having this none of the gas that it did at the beginning of the race in it, we're starting to shrink the size of the gas in that fuel cell. Less mechanical grip on these cars. They're going to have to watch it and not make sure they don't break loose their tires on a track like this. When you don't have as much force shoving you into the ground, it's much easier to get that wrong. Braking zones as well to a certain extent. But at this point, we're trying to slow the weight down. So expect, at least in braking, for the lightweight to have a positive effect and watch for these drivers to send it into the corners a little bit more.
Speaking of someone channeling their inner Max Verstappen and going full send, that gap between Moriarty and Weska has been slowly but surely coming down. So Moriarty might fancy himself a P1 here before the end of this race, because he went from 1.5 seconds at the beginning of the last lap. He's got it all the way down to less than half a second now.
Went 1.2 seconds faster on the last lap there. So Moriarty is flying.
So he is definitely going to keep Ricardo honest here and really say, all right, if you want this, you're going to really have to fight for it. You're not just going to be given this. And oh my goodness, Moriarty just has so much more grip in the braking and the acceleration zone. He actually probably needs to be a little careful there. He may get a little bit, maybe a little bit of ambition before adhesion, to quote Martin Brundle, going into some of these corners.
He needs to make sure he doesn't outbrake himself here and run into the back of the Huesca, because at least by showing how much the gap has closed so far, and like you said, the grip in the braking zone, Moriarty is, I don't want to say swerving because it's not necessarily unfair. Whoa, McCauley and Coquelt get together just a little bit. But no, Moriarty has just that much more option for places to put his car in the braking zones. Down into turn number 1 here, I don't know if Moriarty's close enough to make a move, but watch him into the braking zone here. Moriarty runs it a little bit wider, hoping to get that much more speed on the car down into turn number 3, and then afterwards into turn number 4 here before they go through the S's. Moriarty closing that gap so slightly from the apex to the exit, but is he going to be able to keep that momentum, closing that gap going down the main straight? One of the interesting things right now, Moriarty and Huesca both in the same car. They are both in the Ferrari at the moment. So they are going to be able to, and that is, to be more specific, the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. Both drivers are in. So they are identically matched as far as car goes at the moment. It's going to be up to the drivers themselves and their setups and the work they put into their setup to differentiate them on the track at the moment. Provided
Moriarty. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you there. No, but for Moriarty, what he needs to do is just be able to stick his nose in and get Ricardo just out of position enough, maybe make him look in his mirror, drive out of the side mirrors as well, and force Ricardo into a mistake. Being in equally matched cars, it's going to be extremely difficult to really get that pass on. So he needs to force Ricardo to start looking and driving not straight ahead, but through his mirrors, get him a little off put, and get that run, and that's all he needs, is just a little bit, not too much.
Moriarty just searching for that opportunity, not able to find it yet. Huesca actually gaining a little bit of time on Moriarty. Huesca able to do a 135.9 last lap. Moriarty with a 136.1. So about 2/10 Huesca was able to make up on that last lap with just over 13 minutes to go left in the race. We're looking at about 10 laps left. Clements, a little bit of an off down in 13th, gets back onto the track, moving quite nicely. We're going to put him out of striking range from Hendricks at the moment, though. So he's kind of racing a race of his own at the moment. Vervoort and Weller. Vervoort in the BMW. Weller just behind him in the Aston Martin are going to be looking to battle in the closing stages of this race as well. Ruiz, Cross, Newman, Guedes, and Kakowski, all pretty close. You can see the front runners there. Well, not quite front runners of Coquelt and McCauley. Just passing the back marker of Ruiz there at the moment. Next, for Ruiz behind him is going to be Cross and Newman in the Lamborghini and McLaren, respectively. We'll be watching for them to try and close that gap. They're going to try and get that done while Ruiz rides the slipstream of some of the fastest drivers on the track right now. Looks like we've got McCauley going to go for it finally. Can't quite get it done. Round turn number 11 for him. Wow, goes around.
Ruiz
wow,
is around.
Backwards.
Oh, no. Oh, just a horrible situation, kind of backing
Never
into
wanna
another
see
Mercedes
that.
there. But yeah, Joe certainly looking to take advantage of Niels there. Niels looks like he's starting to struggle with the back of that car, starting to get some oversteer on corner exit. And Ruiz, unfortunately, a little bit similar. He's, lit up those rear tires a little bit, so they're probably a little bit smoking hot and just not getting any grip out of them to get going again.
Yeah, it took him a while to get facing the right direction again. Put a lot of extra heat into those tires. I don't want to say unnecessarily, because as a race driver, you're trying to get back onto the gas as much as possible and as quick as possible to get yourself back in the race. So I don't want to say it was necessarily unnecessary, but he did make an extra rotation, gets a lot of extra heat in the car. Macaulay, definitely not giving up the game just yet, getting ever closer to Kokelt. Now 11 and a half minutes left to go here. The race is ticking down. Macaulay getting impatient, and I don't blame him, especially now. Kokelt is going to be able to use some of these back markers to his advantage to try and put some space between himself and Macaulay. Let's see how he's able to use them. Goes down the inside. Driver gets out of the way there. Makes the
getting
contact.
out of the way. Great job.
Yes, Hendon, unfortunately, in just a horrible position there to try to let them by under blue flag conditions. Probably one of the fastest corners on the track there, and going downhill. But looks like they both navigated it everybody navigated it cleanly, no one's in tears after that. But you can definitely see Niels is definitely struggling in Sector 2 primarily in some of these medium to low speed transition corners. But he's able to maintain that gap with the grunt and go of that big 7-liter V8 Mercedes here in sectors 1 and 3 as he goes. So, while Niels may be struggling, he's still able to keep Joe in the NSX at bay.
It's definitely
Pretty
looking
nice.
like the battle for P3 right now at the moment. P1 and P2 just a little too far ahead, lapping about over a second quicker than these two as well. So the Ferrari is looking in prime position for 1 and 2.
Definitely looks like the Ferrari is a much kinder chassis and car on its tires than the Mercedes and the NSX. But I tell you what, Joe is going to fight this until the absolute last inch, until he can get past that Mercedes. And I think he wants to do it on track, and he doesn't want to have to worry about, the stewards reviewing that incident between Niels and Portis earlier in the race as the thing that gets him onto the podium. I think he wants to do it on merit alone.
I think you're right about that, and tries to get it done around turn number 8. I think that's going to be a good spot for Macaulay to look. Not necessarily because it's a particularly great passing spot, but it just seems like his strength through that corner in the NSX gives him the ability to possibly put a run on Kokelt. Tries to switch over, tries to go down the inside on the exit, can't quite get it done. Has to back off on the apex. Macaulay loses a bunch of speed that way. Can't quite get the pass done, but is going to go back for more. Tries to get the gap closed down into turn number 12 as we hit the 9-minute mark. Macaulay's got to make his move, and he's got to make it move soon because he's got to make sure it sticks from here to the end of the race. So Macaulay biding his time right now, waiting for a door to open so he can just slide right through. Gets a little bit wide there, gets into the gravel. Looks like that's going to be over for Macaulay.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, just a little too aggressive there on corner exit there in the penultimate corner. And that's terrible to see. You hate to see it. But that chance at a podium on merit on the track is just slipped completely through his fingers. And he better be careful there because Upton's not too far behind him. Might try to snatch that P4 away from him now that he's been able to catch up pretty substantially.
Upton now back looking at 4th place. So still has a ways to go down to Macaulay. Got about half-second gap or so. Looks like between the two, we've got Sosa and Warren going at it. Oh, someone going wide there. Looked like maybe the Lexus, a barrier, Lamborghini in the wall
cars
there.
everywhere, all over the place.
Oh no, looks like we got Ruiz and another car taking the alternate route through Sector 3 through the slow chicane, or not really slow chicane, but a slow hairpin there. Yeah, I think you're starting to see the back end of the race where people are going to get as probably their most aggressive and try to gain those 1 or 2 positions for those pivotal points throughout this season. And it looks like Ruiz is just limping back. He may be putting that car back in the pits and, apologizing to his pit crew about all the damage that they're going to have to repair.
Cars left and right getting close to each other. We got the Lexus, a barrier after a little bit of an off into the gravel, is now fighting the NSX of McLeod. Hendricks not too far behind him. Banfield, Truly, Pride, Portis, Junior, Vervoort, all still jockeying for position as we hit just over 7 minutes. Barrier able to keep it ahead of McLeod quite nicely. the moment. About half second in front on to Rommel and Sosa. Sosa going to be looking within striking distance of Marsh from here to the end of the race, but nothing is a guarantee. We still have quite a bit of time left for our drivers to either find the correct line or make a mistake. McCauley there getting a little bit of a scrap with some back markers. To be expected, McCauley, I think, is running on suboptimal tires at the moment after his off into the gravel. I can't imagine he's at correct operating temperature and wear at this point. Problem is the others are considered back markers here. So if he has the pace, they have to let McCauley by, but they're still jockeying for position as it is. That is,
Yeah, they want to be careful. They certainly don't want
he
to
goes
give up
wide, he
too
goes
much.
around, goes into the gravel pit. Oh my God, I don't even know who that was. Is that Weller?
Oh,
That
that's
was
either
Hendon.
that might be Weller, or that might be Hendon.
Hendon.
It's kind of hard to see. Oh my goodness! And now it's all starting to pop off. Yeah, Hendon is just having a torrid race here at Zandvoort, and he didn't enjoy his time at Imola either. So hopefully these first two races, don't drain on him or dwell on him for the entire season. And it might just be going through his early spell of bad luck to come back stronger in the later parts of the season.
Cody Pride now in 15th, battling with Trulli and Banfield in order to try and get that position back. Banfield only 3/10 up on, is that Walker? Is he in there? No, Walker is the back marker in the middle of them, and then Trulli behind him. So still relatively close going there. Walker just seems to has weaseled his way in there with the black and gold livery. Okay, so it looks like Walker is now getting out of the way there. We got Adam Banfield and Trulli now left to battle. Huesca and Moriarty still going at it. Moriarty looking much stronger in the traction zones than Huesca as of 10 to 15 minutes ago. But has the story changed? Huesca now trying to get some nice laps in and keep it nice and smooth, not giving Moriarty a chance to look, to make a look to grab first position from him. Moriarty, you can see, is trying just about everything he can with his line. Tried to cut it up the inside ever so slightly. Had to get on the brakes, so wasn't quite able to put it alongside Huesca. Is going to now be making up some time in the slipstream here. Huesca cuts him off, slams the door on him into turn entrance. Nothing unfair, though. Moriarty gets a decent run out of turn number 13 down to turn number 14. This is going to be a critical turn to get right here. You need to carry as much speed as you possibly can through here to cut you to the last corner, which is higher speed yet. Moriarty coming out of slipstream ever so slightly, slotting back in. Going to start to see that gap close.
Yeah, it looks like Moriarty's dealing with a little bit of understeer there on the final corner exit from Huesca's car. But you're right, Huesca's starting to play a little bit of a dangerous game there in the final two corners, getting as close as possible to the runoff area. And again, we talked about it before. That little bit over could end up having huge consequences, just like we saw with Joe McCauley. So he's got to be cognizant of that and knowing that he, in front, has track position, and it's got to be Moriarty to find that space, which he's not been able to find over these last 10 laps on the back end of Ricardo.
Yeah, Ricardo just showing how much he knows this track. Looks like Moriarty might have the pace, but Huesca's been able to handle putting his car at the right places in order to ensure that Moriarty does not get past. Huesca been doing a great job. He just has little over 3 minutes left to defend. Oh, goes up the inside. Moriarty maybe not, can't quite get it done. Is going to try and pull alongside him again. Moriarty now gets his nose in there. They're going to have to, it's going to be a race down to turn number 12.
Yeah, Moriarty's certainly not in the optimal position there on the outside. Huesca's going to be able to dictate that. But, oh boy, they're going to go, no, thank goodness they don't go 2x2, because that was only going to end in tears.
Huesca not sweating it too much. He knew he had the inside run in that corner, and Moriarty wasn't going to be able to get enough on him in order to get past him quite cleanly. We got this run out of the last corner. Both cars obviously really evenly matched between the two Ferraris. Moriarty now going to look to get the slipstream much closer than he was last time down the straight, it looks like. So I wonder if he's going to pull out alongside here, if he's going to look to the inside or the outside. Maybe neither. Moriarty just a little bit wider, hopefully carrying some more top speed through there is what he hopes for the corner, or higher average speed at the very least. Huesca feeds it into turn number 4. Moriarty, is he going to get aggressive? Goes down the inside, tries to get the pass done. Moriarty gets it done at turn 4. Huesca goes wide, gives it up to Moriarty.
Oh, a little bit of door banging there, but yep, he's forced his way through there, and just what we talked about before, he's got to get just a bit of a car in the mirror of Ricardo to make him think about it and not pay attention to what's going on in front of him. You know, we saw that on the lap prior there in Sector 2 and Sector 3 transition, and looks like he's made it work so far. You know, Ricardo's not going to be too happy about that, getting a little door banging going, but that was definitely an aggressive move by Moriarty.
Didn't seem like it was anything too unfair. Moriarty really took an aggressive line through turn number 4, ran it way wide on the entrance just to swing across the apex. But by the time he got to the apex, he was pretty significantly alongside Huesca, so he was able to kind of step the rest of the way through the door on the exit. Huesca got a little bent out of shape because I don't think he was expecting a pass around turn 4. Huesca ran a little wide, and the rest was history from there. Huesca has a little bit of time, but he's going to need something just short of a miracle to close the gap that he's got in the last minute, 8 seconds. He's got about 8/10 between himself and Moriarty. Moriarty, remember, was within about 4/10 of Huesca for the last 10 to 15 minutes, and only now just got past him. So good luck to Huesca as he tries to retake the position. Right now we got Warren and Sosa going at it. Warren realizing he's only got 48 seconds left
drifting
before the last
corner.
lap.
Yeah, and he's only got one more lap after this. Looks like the leader should be on the final lap now as they get ready to cross the main straight when they finish that up. But yeah, Ricardo, you know, that's unfortunate. You know, he left the door open in turn 4. He went wide, got himself on the marbles, and Moriarty channeling his inner Senna, you know, if there is a gap as a racing driver, you got to go for it. And he went for it. And that, you know, again, you know, Huesca can only be mad at himself for letting that happen. So hats off to Moriarty. He was aggressive. You know, he bided his time. He waited for his moment, and he attacked when he needed to.
Speaking of attacking, Hendricks is going to try and make a move on barrier here as the race timer ticks over to 0. Next time across the start-finish line will be the end of the race, or for Moriarty, I should say. Moriarty coming up through, what sector is he in at the moment? Looks like he is in Sector 3, so coming up to the line relatively soon here. The rest of the drivers will have a chance to meet the same race distance that the leader does. So there will be some jockeying for position at the end, but it looks like Moriarty is going to be coming across the line ahead of Huesca. Moriarty's just got to keep his head down, keep the car underneath him, and he's got it pretty much made. Not too bad of a race from Moriarty today. Huesca just behind him, then McCauley. Moriarty crosses the line, goes first in today's race here, round number 2 at Zandvoort. Nice drive from Moriarty, then Huesca. McCauley into third. What's going on here? Where the heck is Kokelt?
Oh my goodness, did Kokelt have a moment, or did we lose him from the race? I don't see him on the grid anymore. He may have had a technical issue and been unable to finish the race. That would be absolutely devastating.
Upton comes in here and absolutely steals P3 from McCauley.
My goodness. What a phenomenal, fantastic finish to the race. But we still got, I think, a couple of battles going on the track, and I think Buck might be our last runner as he's bringing up the back end of the field. So Buck's look like he's going to be the final runner across. So we've still got a huge group of cars just ahead of him that I think still need to finish.
Kokelt is showing still as third on mine, so I believe he is third, but for some reason we lost him on the timing sheet. Hannah runs a little wide, can't get it by Warren. Warren battling with Sosa at the moment, both cross the line. It goes Sosa, then Warren, then Hannah. Drivers slipping and sliding after the start-finish line. Looks like the last of our drivers are coming across, and that should be your finishing order for today. Huesca, Moriarty, then I believe Kokelt. Now Upton has passed Kokelt on the timing sheets for my screen, but I believe Kokelt will be keeping that third position. So that's what we've got for the moment. We've got Ricardo Huesca coming across the line in second. First is Sean Moriarty, and then third is Niels Kokelt.
Oh my goodness.
We're showing on the screen here.
So my
according to McCauley, he said he suffered a last lap puncture.
Oh wow.
So that would explain why he was extremely slow on that last lap and why he may have lost positions. That is a awful way to have happen. You know, I remember we had something similar happen to the team in our endurance race at the 12 Hours of Silverstone charity event. to support Huntington's Disease Foundation. You know, the leader in there took a puncture in the Bentley. That's got to be pretty devastating, but still a great race from everybody.
Yeah, stewards are going to definitely have to review that, make sure everyone's in the right position. But
Yeah,
Daryl
game
Upton,
timetable's definitely wrong.
yeah, definitely. Daryl Upton in a position to possibly gain quite a few points there, potentially up to as far as third. Not quite sure if that's right. It looks like our top three were Moriarty, Huesca, then Kokelt for the time being. So that was a very exciting race from Zandvoort today. I don't know what you, Dimitri, and you, Brian, thought about it, but that was quite exciting. I really enjoyed that.
That was a phenomenal race, and you know, I'm seeing here from Niels. Yeah, it looks like he suffered a technical difficulty on his end. Looks like he had a computer issue, and he just completely disconnected from the session. I would doubt, considering the race that he was running, that he was just gonna quit. So that's pretty unfortunate on his end to have that happen. That's pretty terrible to have thrown away a position that was beyond his control from a technical problem.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. No one ever likes to see that. Huesca running a pretty good race, though, and this being his double points race is going to be able to really take home a nice haul of points today. That's going to put him, I imagine, in the top 5 at the very least for championship contention. Kokelt, I think, is going to remain dominant. We'll see where the stewards decide that he ends up. I think they're going to cut him a little slack on the disconnection there, but whether that's going to get him back to where he was running or not, that remains to be seen, and as only the stewards know the answer to that. So I don't think we've got interviews lined up at the moment, especially because we can't exactly tell who's on the podium. So we'll have official race results for you. Same time, same place next week. That is 3 p.m. What is that? 3:45 p.m. Eastern. Race starts.
Yep.
Qualifying starts. 4 p.m. Eastern. The race starts. We'd love to see you back here again next week, but don't. If GT3 racing isn't your thing, don't worry. We have Formula One. We've got a couple iRacing events we do from time to time as well. Be sure to check out our Discord. Go to ppresports.com. Get involved. You can see yourself on the track, on a stream, or if you want to join us in the booth, see what you're made of as far as your commentating skills go, feel free to join the Discord, and we'll get you sorted out from there. In the meantime, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We got Panther, Squirmy, Ruthless Racer, Gernot Legger, Biggest, and Kurt Pugh 95. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the broadcast today. Love to have you out here. We do it for you guys, and we hopefully will have a nice race for you next weekend from Monza. That will be an interesting one. That is one of our 3 on the calendar, 2-hour races. So be expecting it to run a little bit longer next week. But Imola, Monza, not Imola. We already
The Temple of Speed.
Right back to one of the founding homes of motorsport in Italy. So, you know, there's some great tracks there. It's okay. I enjoy Monza just like anyone else. Although turn 1 and turn 2 may not be everyone's favorite.
That will be very interesting. Obviously, I'm more familiar with the Formula One side of things, and that is hard enough to get your car through when you know that the tires are going to stay stuck. But when you start talking about these GT3 cars, you've got much more weight, less downforce, and some of them being rear-wheel drive. That's not going to help you get out of that corner or that chicane of turn 1 and 2 any easier. So I expect that to be a large contention or point of contention between our drivers. So be on the lookout for that next week. Same place, 2-hour race in Monza. We'll have the updated standings for you then. Congratulations today to what we believe our top 3 to be of Kokelt, Macaulay, and Huesca. So we'll see everyone next week. I want to thank you, Brian and Dimitri, both for coming out. I had a great time. Hopefully we'll see you again next week at Imola.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Again, thank you all to all of our viewers out there. And again, we'd love to have you here in PPR. I unfortunately will not be with you all. I'll be on vacation, a welcome break for the weary. So I will see you all certainly next year.
Well, that will conclude our stream for today, ladies and gentlemen. Next week, round number 3 at Monza. Be there. We'll see you then. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.